All right, aloha nui kako. The Kona Community Development Plan Action Committee will now come to order. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. The time is 12:20. This meeting is being held in person by interactive conference technology. The meeting will also be recorded and uploaded to the Planning Department's YouTube channel. As a reminder, per Sunshine Law, AC members appearing remotely must keep their cameras on and announce anyone who is with them, except for minors and their location. We'll start off with a roll call. We'll start with the board members first.
Nancy Pasikio, I live in Keho and I'm vice chair.
I'm Charlotte Thompson. I'm on the action committee. I'm from Kona.
RJ Kirshner, committee member from Kona.
Shane Pollica Nelson from Kealakekua.
Then I'm chair, John Pelletier. I live in Oklahoma. And if staff can introduce themselves.
Aloha, Janice Hotza with the Planning Department.
Jessica Lahip with the Planning Department.
Anyone on Zoom?
We have Jean Campbell, Deputy Corporation Counsel, and we also have Elizabeth August.
Hi, Jean.
Hello.
And then with us today, we have Director and Deputy Director of the Planning Departments here today. Y'all want to introduce yourself? Do you want to introduce yourself too?
Oh, hi, Michelle. I'm Deputy Director.
Nice.
Nice to be here.
So noting the absences of Rosalind and Charlie today. Some housekeeping, please make sure your cell phones are turned off on silence. If there's anyone here who'd like to testify, please fill out the sign-up form and give it to our staff. Zoom testifiers can raise their hand or send a message in the chat to the Zoom host indicating which item they wish to testify on. We ask that everyone please state your name before speaking. And then to all of you who are here attending here in person, please remember to speak towards the OWL camera microphone so that everyone on Zoom can hear. I've also got this aloha etiquette from our planning staff that we share at a lot of our meetings, so I'm going to share it here today. So just some aloha etiquette to remember as we conduct our meeting today. Maintain an open and positive attitude, listen to understand. Everyone has a right to share and be comfortable with their own ideas. It's okay to disagree as long as it's done respectfully. If you need to argue the issue and not against the person. One person speaks at a time with no side conversations. Limit distractions by turning cell phones off and not doing outside work during the meeting. And in appreciation of everyone's time, please honor time limits. Okay, that's all the testimony I have. So we'll move on to, the housekeeping I have. Let's move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from January 13th, 2026?
This is Nancy and I moved to approve the minutes from January 13th.
Second.
Okay, motion by Nancy, seconded by RJ. Any discussion? Any corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes are passed. Okay, the time is 12:24. And the committee will now call for statements from the public. As stated in the published agenda, members of the public may provide public testimony regarding any agenda item now or at the time the agenda item is called to order. Public testimony may be limited to 3 minutes in length per agenda item. If there's anyone here who would like to testify, please fill out the sign-up form in front of the table and give it to our staff. Anyone in person that wishes to testify? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom like to testify now? Okay, we'll call for testifiers as the agenda goes on. Yeah. Okay, announcements. First, we want to welcome our new member, Shane Pollica Nelson.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Shane. It's good to see you again. I know you were involved before, so.
How much time did you serve on this committee in the past?
It wasn't a layover. I feel like I had 3 mayors. Was King?
It was quite a few years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And just to add, I think way back when we were advocating for the CDP, I was like 19, 20 years old.
In the mid-90s.
Yeah, in the mid-90s.
That's probably when I met you
That's
first,
when
when we were starting to lobby for regional plan.
Yeah, the regional planning. Yeah, I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to work in community at this capacity. Community development is kind of my hobby. not my profession. And so I like having fun in this process. And then of course with my policy background, I really enjoy finding ways and how we can help with improving our land use. And working with the boss man here, yeah. Figuring out ways and how we can interpret some of the policies would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane.
Mhm.
And for our second announcement, as always, the planning department is currently seeking applicants for the Kona CDP Action Committee and requests assistance in spreading the word to interested committee members. The application can be found on the mayor's office website under boards and commissions. Okay, the time is 12:27. The committee will now move on to business item number 1. Update of the Kona CDP. The AC will discuss with Director Darrow the future approach and potential timeline for updating the Kona CDP in relation to the AC's October 30th, 2025 letter requesting funding to support a comprehensive review and update of the 2008 Kona CDP as amended September 2019. Discussion and potential next steps. Is there any testimony from anyone here on Zoom for this agenda item? Okay. Seeing none. So Jeff, you got our letter and you responded to our letter. You wanna maybe elaborate on your response to our letter?
Do we have the letter?
It was attached in our meeting packet.
Okay, great.
Were you on our letter or your letter?
Oh, my letter.
Yeah, we can share screen and show it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The, yeah, it would be good to see that before I answer.
Yeah.
I was so focused on the questions that Charlie sent them. I was like,
Yeah, well, he's gonna go
Focus on-
through those after we talk about this.
right. Just to clarify, Jean might wanna chime in on this. It might be better to do the questions during the third party reports.
Yes, that was actually our plan.
Yeah, Charlie's
Yeah.
questions are.
Yeah, we'll do this during the third party votes.
You don't have a copy, Janice?
Here's a copy of yours.
Great, thank you. Yeah, let me just take a quick look at it.
Hope
So-
that's not the report.
Mainly we wanted to start getting the ball rolling regarding these gray infrastructure studies because our CDP is already, it was adopted 2008, so it's time to start kind of getting the things in line to do an update, and without those studies,
Yeah,
there's
It's
nothing
actually
to
required
update.
By ordinance that it be updated every 10 years.
sure. So unfortunately, I mean, this goes across the board too, is that we are limited by our budget, right? So every year, we approach the administration, we have our budget in mind. And then we're told whether or not they can accommodate our budget or if they cannot and we need to cut. So for the past several years, we've been told everything has been status quo, which means we haven't been able to get new positions. We haven't been able to do any type of significant planning processes that we'd like to do. And we've just been told to keep everything in status quo. We did something this year that we have been, similar to other CDP action committees and members of the community. People are always asking for us to be able to work on an updated plan or be able to implement a plan. So we're looking at this in terms of, I wouldn't say priority, but I would say timeline. When we look at all of the CDPs around the island, the one that stands out the most as not being updated for the longest period of time is South Gila. So we have put into this year's budget some monies to initiate that particular update to their community development plan. if I were to pick what or guesstimate as to what would be the next plan that would be in line, I would guess based on the fact that Kona, South Hilo, or South Kohala and North Kohala all were implemented about 2008. I would put a high priority on the North Kona plan as being one of those that would be next in line as far as an implementation. And we can talk about what we can do until things get better economically to be able to raise our budgets. I don't want to sound like, we're not grateful for what we have, we are. But the planning department took some mean hits this last year with the whole administration change in the federal government. We lost 6 positions based on federal funding. And so that was, we had several planners in our long range division, which typically would work on long range plans, general plan, natural and historic resources, those kind of things. We lost a planner in our planning division, and we lost supportive staff. And we've asked for those to be reinstated in the general fund, but there's been no money. So we basically have not increased at all in positions. We just have to continue somehow to try to maintain the same level of work, but at a much less workload capacity. But again, we're still looking at priorities. Right now, as mentioned, the South Hilo is, I think everyone can agree, that plan was,
They never got a plan and,
they did, it's in 1970.
oh, yeah.
Five.
Not part of this CDP round.
No, but, I mean, I've read that plan, I use that plan on a regular basis, it was a very well done plan, just like all of the other plans. But it's time it needs to be amended, there's been significant changes in Hilo and in the whole Hilo area. And so this will be their time to be able to work on amendments or a new plan for that area. Again, the next plan after that plan would be North Kona. And I don't know, this is where you folks could provide us with direction as far as how you want to see that plan, move forward. I hear you want to update studies and things, but if it's going to be a mere amendment to the existing plan, or if you're looking at just creating a new plan, we use the Kona Community Development Plan on a regular basis. It's award-winning, right? That's what we all hear when we talk about the Kona Community Development Plan. It brought in areas of planning, entirely new areas, right? Transit, TODs, right? It brought in all the different styles of planning. We've got
More multimodal.
yeah, the multimodal plan. I mean, just so many areas in the plan were new as far as planning goes around Hawaii County, right? We've had we've had success with it, overall giving direction. There are times that the plan basically says this isn't gonna work in this area, a proposed development or something that is being requested for a particular area. When we look at the plan and we could, look for consistency, sometimes it doesn't work, right? And then we end up that particular project won't move forward based on its consistency with the plan. It might be good to hear from you folks as far as, I have heard in the past about how you'd like to look at trying to implement some sort of plan for Kailua Kona, the older areas in the village that we've had that, you know, like right now, Pohoa is a prime example. They're going through changes in Pohoa Village that they're trying to deal with older structures, insufficient infrastructure, but also lack of opportunities. And so they're looking at not addressing it necessarily through a plan, but through a new zoning ordinance that allows them a new zoning district. And in that zoning district, they address issues regarding infrastructure, you know, lack of infrastructure, setbacks, parking requirements. It's tough to deal with issues regarding older buildings, you know, because those always bring their own issues, right? We have sometimes historic issues. We have trying to renovate or repair or even tear down and rebuild. It may be difficult based on the circumstances that that particular building may find itself in. But again, there's always the opportunity to create that sort of plan that can address and how you want to move forward with addressing these tough issues, right, in these areas. We get calls all the time from business owners or residential owners that find themselves in an older building and they have to do something, but they're restricted by the current code or the current laws that may affect them, or updates to wastewater or water or whatever it may be, infrastructure in general. But anyway, again, if you know, we could really use your assistance in providing direction that you would like to move forward, updating your plan so that we can begin starting to focus on that and provide energy towards that with staff. We may not be able to provide a lot of financial help at this point, but in the future, we hope to. That's our goal. So we can only do what we can do with what we have, and that's where we're at right now with those. Hopefully that kind of helps give you a little idea of where we're at.
Yes, Nancy.
Thank you for that. As far as our letter, in terms of the gray infrastructure, I think the study that's probably most expensive and maybe most needed is the transportation study. And then that was the big issue back when the plan was developed in the first place. That brought a lot of people to the meetings because they were upset about the lack of transportation planning and our insufficient transportation network. And that's probably still the case and maybe more so. But those plans, that's an expensive, you have to hire a consultant to do that if it's gonna really serve a purpose to, you know, measure traffic volumes and connectivity and where it's better to put the money in terms of connectivity, where their Laka Street and Mackay is still a viable, you know, should be in the plan or shouldn't, you know, but you need like experts to do. We have our opinions, but that is an example of a plan that an expert needs to help us with. That's probably costs a lot of money to contract.
Well, the Kona CDP is probably the most extensive plan that provided direction towards improvements to the transportation network.
And that's because it was a really big deal to the community.
So your concurrency table was, you know, it identified concurrency zones, and in each zone had a list of roadway segments that needed to be done in that particular concurrency zone, right? So, and then you had like these overall road improvements, right? Henry Street to the airport, 4 lanes, that's been done. I mean, the Mamalahoa bypass from, Kealakekua back to, Kailua Kona, that's been done. So those were the 2 significant, roadway segments, but along the way, we've seen La'aloa, Malcolm Makai come in. You're absolutely correct. The next one of the main ones that we need to see happen is Laco Street. We are working with the landowner of those segments that are between the end of Laco down to Ali'i. And it's a balance. In fact, that's one of the roadway segments that's on the CIP list for DPW. So we're hoping that's gonna be something we can move forward within a short period of time. We've been working on it for I would say several years now, trying to work out you know, who's gonna do the roadway improvements, what zoning and development is gonna go in as part of that project, right? Because a lot of it has to do with being these roadway segments are done in conjunction with development, right? People just don't show up and build a road, right? Typically. Except, you know, we do have our CIP, which sometimes gives us money to be able to do segments. The other major one that is on the CIP list is phase 3 of the Ani Keoho Kaloli from
Hallelujah.
yeah, it's gonna go, this one is going from Hinalani to Kaiminani. So that'll be a significant one. That, I'm not sure where phase 4 is. I know there is an extension from Kaiminani out to the university. I just don't know. I don't think they've done University Drive yet, which is the interior Palamanui Road. But that, once we get that connection from Kaiminani to Hinalani, that's gonna really provide some much needed connectivity, as well as Laco Street. There are others, but again, as far as your plan now and the direction it gave, I don't know, other than getting current traffic counts, I don't know if you could better this, you know what I mean? As far as identifying what needs to be done as far as improvements in North Kona and South Kona.
I know touch. I did appraisal work on that area where the Laco Street extension is. And the last time I saw it, there were 3 graves in the way. Have we gotten past that hurdle?
They're working, they have the studies, my understanding is they're working on a right of entry. Before you can do any work, you have to work out the paperwork that allows like the county to go in and do surveys and things like that. But my understanding is the archaeological has all been done. So they just have to identify the alignment. But it looks like that alignment was definitely able to be done. So that's why it's on the STIP right under the CIP right now, is because they're looking at the possibility of being able to go in and do that project.
What of the extension from Keaho to Kuakini Highway of the, what do we call it?
Yeah, the Ali'i Parkway.
Yeah,
I chaired that
because
subcommittee.
if we can't alleviate the traffic on Kuakini at some point.
Right. So that's a tough one.
That one's a big one, if I may. I remember that there's a problem between Keoho Shopping Center and La'aloa. Like that huge cultural complex, Keakeawani Rohine, I believe, is blocking part of that process. So I think rerouting or remember we made recommendations from the CDP when Harry Kim was mayor. And the recommendation was that we can move forward using the La'aloa road, that new road that you brought up.
Welcome, Cut.
Yeah, and extending that from there to Laco Street. And I think that was the recommendation that was done back then.
You were chairing a committee on this,
subcommittee.
yeah, and that was like right before COVID or something.
It was, yeah, but we were able to make the recommendation right before we went into shutdown.
Yeah, we were trying to get the updated, like where that ended up, and we couldn't find anything. So we'll have to talk to you about that. You probably know more than anybody else.
That would, that would be, we've been having in-house talking about that as well,
For a long
because,
time,
yeah, that one section right now is kind of like, okay, needs to be addressed somehow in the future, but the ability to do connectivity from La'aloa all the way to Kuakini through Sunstone's project, through to Laco on in, most of the alignments are in place, you know, and so it just really needs to be a matter of getting that back on the agenda and talking about
Talking to people to
Right.
get a consensus.
Yeah, because that could provide so much much needed connectivity, right?
Especially since the county owns most of the alignment.
Right. That's why we were doing it, is for that Kahaluita Keoho
I
Park.
believe our recommendation was not just it being a park, it's a parkway because access to historic sites and open space as well. Like I think the other CDP members on there were proactive about open space as well. And so that particular parkway was developed, or the vision of that was to make it so that it's opening more open space.
Pedestrian and
Access to cultural
Not-
sites.
the original federal design was this 4-lane expressway thing, and the community wouldn't go for that.
And so we took it down, right? I think Curtis was on that, Curtis was on that conversation as well, but I think
So
the
like
other
that-
thing that we can adjust to right now is the homelessness that takes place in that area, that it can be managed more if we provide some access.
Would you be willing to reconvene the
One of the
committee?
reasons why I came back on.
Cause I know that
Reasons
some of
why.
the folks, like Curtis, his attitude about the road is moderated over the years, and he's much more willing to be more open than he was.
What I recall in the last conversations that I heard about it was that, as you mentioned, it would be more instead of a federal, 4-lane highway,
Right.
it was more a meandering
Correct.
2-lane road.
Multimodal.
And you had bike lanes, and
Mhm.
you had preservation throughout there in open space,
Mhm.
which I think the community would be fully in support.
But there were some people that were still at that point vehemently opposed to anything,
Right.
but I don't know if we have to find out if that's still the case.
I think
Because
that-
it's definitely needed.
While I agree the farmer community development plan was really intricate, the concurrency requirements
Yeah.
required those roadways be built before you could get a
Before you
zoning
can
change
use
in these areas.
So for 10 years, we had, I think it was 0 rezones,
Yep.
Yeah,
and it was because of that requirement. In 2019, they softened the language, and basically brought it back down to the language in the zoning code for concurrency, which is if you come in and you do a rezoning, you have to, if you trigger a traffic impact analysis report, which is typically 50 AM, PM peak hour trips. Usually not many, only larger type developments. So I mean, when I mean larger, I mean a commercial development that has quite a bit of traffic, the gas station or even schools, things like that. A lot of traffic in the morning, a lot of traffic in the afternoon, those types of things. But they were trying to say that if a project came in within a concurrency zone, that affected one of these segments and you triggered a traffic impact analysis report, you had to comply with any improvements that were required for that segment, right? Instead of saying, you cannot occupy, even though you may get an approval, we just wouldn't recommend approval because it made no sense to recommend approval, but not occupy until that particular requirement is done. So I'll give an example, like if you take a majority of these, a number of these concurrency zones had the Kahului Keauhou Parkway in it, and it wasn't gonna be done in our lifetime, right? And so any project, the Laco Street one included, couldn't move forward because the concurrency zone said you couldn't occupy until those happened, right? So that's why in 2019, I believe it was after Missler too. Missler was another reason why we would. And it attempted to soften the language and kind of bring it more.
Shall versus should.
Yeah,
And may.
I chaired that committee as well.
So part of my motivation for being here is I believe that there's a shortage of housing in Kona. And particularly long range or long-term rental housing. And without the ability to successfully get stuff zoned to RM
Yeah,
in that central district, it
Right.
becomes a hard hurdle
yeah.
to fix.
Believe me, this is, I think this has been going on since Adam and Noah or something, but, you know, when Kona 3 was a pretty touchy application for all of us, right? The intention, you know, there was a lot of discussion about transportation theory, right? And that was that you try to, provide opportunities for housing in urban cores to be able to allow the people that are driving in from far areas to come into the urban core and be able to just either bike to work or walk to work or bus to work or some versus having to drive from Ocean View or Waikoloa or whatever. But and I'm not, Kona 3 may not be the prime example, but there were others with on the Makai side of Kuakini, Queen K and Kuakini that you know we've seen come up, and there's always it's difficult to get them through, you know. There's not a lot of times there's opposition. I think people say we don't want more development because it brings more traffic. Not understanding that the other side of that is if we bring development, the hope is that the
Alleviate
traffic,
some of the harder traffic.
but people will say, how do we know that the locals are gonna be able to buy that, right? And not anybody else, right? And that's a tough.
Is there a way to restrict RM zoning to just long-term rental?
I don't know if you can restrict it, but a lot of times, developers will come in and do it to be able to get incentives. A lot of them get credits right now for affordable housing and long-term rentals. There's better ways to do it, to avoid the whole rezoning, and one of them is Nancy was speaking about earlier is the 201H process, which is in the HRS, that's where you find it, HRS 201H. HO 201H-38 talks about affordable housing, and if you do this, you get certain exemptions from
Zoning exemptions in exchange for 50% affordability.
Right.
The problem with the affordable housing requirements, and I'm gonna say this from the appraiser's point of view, okay, is the management is financially onerous.
Right,
The reason is those tenants need to be qualified every year,
yeah,
and it costs 20 to 25% of total income just to qualify them.
and I'm not real familiar about that aspect of it, but my understanding is that it's almost like a federal requirement or,
It is.
yeah. we've had what we've done, more recently is we have what are called fair share requirements in rezones. So we put in an allowance that if a developer, will provide opportunities of more affordable housing beyond the minimum, such as like 50, even to 100, we waive the fair share in relation to that percentage. And that seems to have been allowing some affordable housing projects to come in where they're not necessarily under a mandate, they're just doing it as their project, trying to meet that standard. But it's hard because you really want to be under an affordable housing agreement, and then you come under those requirements to have to manage it and provide all of them. It is tough.
I have an observation. If you're gonna be developing, and if you got plan to have a lot of young families that are able to move in, affordable housing would be one of them. You're probably gonna need to put a school in, another school. Our schools are at max. Yeah, I came from a neighborhood in Southern California called Rossmore that occupied about 1.5 square miles. And they actually built 5 elementary schools within that, just along that main road. You had all these different elementary schools, which was great because their kids all walked to school. You know, I mean, you don't have the traffic element unless you're also bringing people in from the outside, but it's a way to reduce the impact on traffic and also serve the community. I don't know if anybody has really considered putting in some stipulations. If you build a community that's this large, have a park, have an elementary school, you know, I mean, it's just common sense, right? That don't know if there's anything built in.
What you're speaking about really applies to larger projects.
Yeah.
We haven't had any for a long time. And I don't know if it's the economy, I don't know if it's just the process, I don't know what it is, but the fact is, I mean, when you look in the history of rezoning on this island, there were quite large projects that came in that provided opportunities within the project, right? You would have a requirement for parks, you would have fair share for DOE that would put in a school, right? You had fair share for infrastructure in the region. All of that is part of the rezoning process, as well as the state land use process. They also have requirements that they have to participate in providing these types of infrastructure improvements and things like that. So, I mean, we have some that are sitting, they're just like sitting in limbo. They come back every so often for a time extension, but they haven't gotten off the ground. Paula Manui right now is a big one. That one's going to have a lot of parts. I'm sure they have to participate in DOE fair share funds.
Where is that?
That's the one that is just north of the airport, right next to the university.
That was
Okay,
gonna be a
right.
TOD. It was supposed to be a TOD.
It is.
But I thought they
yeah.
had a water issue.
Well, they're working on it.
I mean, I'd love to see a TOD there.
Yeah.
Oh,
They don't get the water from
Definitely.
Macaulay? They don't get the water resource from Macaulay?
I'm not sure where they're getting it from. They have wells that I'm not sure if it's from, I don't even want to speculate. I know that they've had issues with water, but they've been.
One of the consultants told me, this was a couple of years ago, they drilled and the salinity
Right,
level was too high.
yeah.
And so they've been putting industrial development in that
Well,
area.
they're moving. There's stuff coming in right now, so definitely movement on that project. It is a TOD, that's one of the established TODs that came in, went through the design center review, became a project district. So that whole zoning there is project district. Another one is Makalapua. They're about to come in at some point. That's gonna be another one. But that project is, a lot of it is built out already. I mean, it's right now the old industrial area, well, yeah. By Target, Ross, all that.
all the way
thing.
down.
Right.
They
It's
could
zoned,
do, they could do a wonderful thing there if they do it right.
ironically, it's zoned MCX. So they're changing it from MCX to project district, which is gonna be this compact mixed use village type.
So the new general plan has it reclassified to general commercials, which is more appropriate as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
So that'll be a good thing. They've been doing all their work on the EIS. And so they're gonna need to come in for rezoning and SMA. And I believe a small special.
And they need water
state land
too.
use. Yeah, they're working on that. Water's always been an issue. I know Mr. Young put in one of his questions in there about water.
It seems like the,
Yes, folks, sorry to be the wet blanket, but I think we're kind of straying from our agenda item, which is about updates to the CDP itself, and we're getting a little bit lost in review of specific projects. So can I ask us, before we wander into the Department of Water Supply as well, can we kind of refocus on, the need for and timeline of updates to the CDP? Thanks.
Yeah, Eugene, I think we're just all excited to be talking with you, but yes. yeah, maybe-
I understand, and and
Yes.
one of the things that is absolutely beyond fantastic about Jeff is his incredible depth of knowledge and his desire to be helpful and informative, and that lets us go all over the place because we all want to know all the fabulous things that are in Jeff's brain. So, but because we do have a sunshine agenda, and I'm kind of guessing by really the lack of people in your audience today that the agenda items were not things that attracted a lot of interest. And so I think we want to kind of try hard to stick to our agenda items so that we're not robbing people in the public who may have been interested in what we're talking about to go there.
Okay, thank you, Gene.
two
Thanks.
things I wanted to say on this item is I think that affordable housing and water are two things that this plan didn't address well enough. So in terms of updating water and affordable housing are two things that plan lacks.
I mean, we would really appreciate your input on the direction that you would like to see, either on, it sounds like, I mean, as I mentioned, I like this plan. It's an excellent plan. I wouldn't think that you would need to go to the point of a new plan, just amendments to this plan. But again, that's, you folks need to discuss that, but any direction that we can start focusing on that you could provide us, we would really appreciate.
Well, I personally don't feel that it's my job to make changes to the plan. I think there's two things. There's some technical updates like current information on sewer and water and transportation is certain things that need some expertise. On the other hand, we need to go out to the community.
Of
And
course.
it's not up to me to make amendments to the plan as
Sure.
far as I'm concerned. I think I'd like to suggest that at some point, whenever it's appropriate, that we're involved through our chapter 16 mandate as far as the action committee to be involved in helping to design how we go out to the public and when we go out to the public and what form that takes. As far as new working groups, to get widespread public support, because if we don't get public support for any changes, it's going to end up in a disaster. So we have to go through a grassroots input process. And I think this group can help with that.
Nancy, I'm sorry, one more time, affordable housing and
Water.
That should go without saying,
Major things that I don't think were addressed well enough in 2008.
And Jeff, I think this is part of the community development plan. You stop me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned the downtown village area. we had passed something saying that we would look into alleviating some of the problems in downtown so that it can be renovated. Cause buildings down there are getting old, deteriorated. The main problem is that many of the lots there are below the zoning threshold for minimum lot size. So and they're being so old, those buildings become legal non-conforming. And they've gotten to the point where they can't meet the 25-50% threshold for redevelopment. So what happens is they slowly rot away. They can't provide parking, they can't meet zoning, so unless they're given some avenue to redevelop or renovate those buildings, we're just gonna watch our downtown deteriorate.
What I would suggest is taking a look at that proposed bill for Pahoa
Okay,
and see if that's something that might work, but also that's the beauty of new new code, new rules, you know, when you find yourself, this isn't working. You might be able to pass an ordinance that can make it work, you know, for what you need.
the other problem that exists down there is that an awful lot of it is in flood zone. And I think the county's hands are tied by FEMA, right? They have to do the 50-25%
Yeah,
if they're in the flood
Right.
zone.
yeah, you end up having to meet base flood elevation, and that can be very, very tough.
Any other questions for Director Darrow?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Chair,
Okay,
we
so-
had a question on Zoom. It's actually for Jeff, if he could clarify the Anakehokulole Highway Extension phase.
Sure.
Yeah.
So every year we have proposed capital improvement project lists that come in from the different departments and go you know, before the council for approval. This year, before I came here, I was looking to see on the list what projects are being proposed in North Kona. There were three that stood out. One was the Anakehokulole phase 3, which is the phase that goes from Inalani to Kaiminan. So that's on the capital improvement project list. The capital improvement project list doesn't necessarily mean that you have the money to do it.
Right.
It's requesting monies it could be from grants, could be from fair share, mainly from bonds, from the bond. But again, if it's on the list, then you can ask for the money to be able to do the project. So that is one of them. The other is the Laco Street extension. And there was one other that's a smaller project than I mentioned.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Sure.
What's the question?
The question of, actually, aloha, Jeff.
Aloha.
I am Lamaku Mikahala Roy, and as a kahu of Ahu'enahiau, you have received, even as the last meeting of the Action Committee, updates on, and what the legislature has received and the county has received from me for years. And that is a complete file on why this is the 50th anniversary of the restoration of Ahu'enahiau. Because that heiau is restored, there is incredible history that is coming forward for the earth. And so this is now probably numerous times that I'm testifying to this committee, and to see you again is good.
Lamaku,
because-
is this related to agenda item 1,
Mhm.
the update to the CDP?
Yeah, because the CDP has to be aware of this matter. This is a statement that the lands from Kaloko to Honaunau are to be not built upon any further.
They will be maintained but not built upon. This is the testimony I have submitted and why. In 2010, I began to hear from the ancestors at Kamakohoni. And this, the minute I have had this happen, you have heard. The government has heard. Why? Because I was guided to do so. I have sent letters dated March 3rd, 2021 to the legislature, to the governor, all of this in the light of day. So I'm now testifying before the action committee for the CDP. This information to remind you about this. People like Janice Glennie, Shane, you know this for many years. This has come about and it hasn't changed. There's only been amazing documentation that's coming forward. As a result, Halau no Eo Kahilimauna anchors the enlarged heiau of Ahu'ena. In the future, it will be larger than Pu'ukohala. Yeah.
Okay, so Lamaku, you'd like to see your testimony.
This
And
is definitely FYI for the action committee.
You
need to know
testified
about
at our
Kona.
last meeting on this issue.
And
I
am
suggest maybe you
testifying
call
now
the
with
director.
Mr. Darrow, because I've talked to the planning people under you. You should have well heard of it, and I know you have. So I'm making this knowledgeable to the future of the community. Nancy, you said a really big thing. Talk to the people. Yep, we're gonna talk to them about this too.
Okay.
And
We've
we are
heard
going
from
to
you at the
enforce
last-
this because it is coming from, it's as if you're talking to the Pope here of the Christian faith. You are talking to Lamaku of the Hawaiian faith. And I mean to uphold that, and I do. So please, you're hearing right from me. If you have any questions, ask away. But I am saying to you, Mr. Darrow, that I'm reminding you that these lands from Kalokoho to Honau are not, this is Kalua o Kalani, the second heaven, the name of all of Hawaii before we became Hawaii. This information is so very important, yet none of you show any interest in this. You have closed your heart and your heads. So I ask you not to, and I ask you to remember that this is part of your purview. You are responsible to getting this information to the people. And so that's what I say today.
Okay, thank you, Lamaku.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this agenda item?
By the way, I'm also Her Royal Majesty Ka'io Mana'ulau Kalani Ki Eki Eloa Kiahi Ena Namo Kalaulani. Had my parents lived to be in this day, you would be talking to the King and Queen of Hawaii from the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii. That is alive and well by spirit and by the lands. So this is why this is important, because that's my other identity here. And I'm entering it on your forms that.
Yeah, I'll take that for you. Okay. I think if we're closing on that discussion, thanks again, Jack, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we got some more questions for you towards the end of the meeting. Yeah.
Sure.
So the time is 1:14. We're gonna move on to business item number 2. Hawaii County Council Bill 63 relating to dwellings. The AC will discuss any amendments. Bill 63 proposed by the county council and consider whether to submit additional testimony on the legislation. Is there any testimony?
Why don't you give them an update?
Yes, sure. So on February 4th, they heard Bill 63. So a reminder on Bill 63, this is to allow housing in any form in mixed use commercial industrial areas. We submitted testimony with a lot of questions that we thought issues with the bill and issues with just allowing housing in MCX. Council heard that, lots of discussion, lots of deferrals of the bill. And at the last meeting, Councilmember Kimball introduced an amendment to move this housing from just being a permitted use down to a use permit case.
So in other words, instead of just a broad permitted use in MCX for dwellings, and under chapter 11 or whatever, It would be specifically under, that's A, all the permitted uses in the code are A, and then B, you have to get a use permit. So it has to get a specific approval for that request, rather than being a general across the board permitted use. So that's what the,
Yes, yeah, so that was proposed and it was passed, so we have a new draft of the bill. It's draft 2 or draft 3. That draft of the bill ended up passing first reading, so now it's gonna be heard at second reading at council sometime in the future. Nancy and I were there. We did read our letter, or restate our request that the bill get moved back to committee before any more discussion, but I think, in general, this change, Nancy and I thought it was a good thing. That this is not just opening up all of MCX housing or MCX districts to housing, but really tying it to workforce, so tying it to a specific reason to build this housing in there. Sorry.
like you pointed out at that last meeting when we were there, this request was motivated by the need within MCX for on-site workforce housing. But their original plan just to allow across the board housing in MCX was way broader than, had a lot of much bigger implications. But to, target it for on-site workforce housing through an application process, the use permit makes a lot more sense, because it's much more likely to target the cause and effect. I mean, on-site workforce housing is a wonderful thing. If so, how legislatively, whatever they do to get it is a wonderful thing, but they shouldn't be approving something that's not necessarily gonna get that.
Right.
That was the problem with the original bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, we think about, like the hospital again. I mean, it'd be great if they had housing that could house where.
And schools, teachers,
Schools, totally,
lack
yeah.
of teachers,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, did you pass these around?
No,
No. So we put together some draft testimony for second reading, where again, I think it's providing comments on the bill and saying that the use permit, that we support this condition, but we would like to see it strengthened. So the last part I think is really important. As part of that review process, we suggest that any applicant seeking a use permit to develop dwellings within MCX district address the following: the relationship of the request for workforce housing to employment located within the MCX district, and the affordability of proposed dwellings for the workforce that the dwelling would serve. Just kind of, again, strengthening that idea of tying this to the workforce, tying this to specific workforce reasons.
I appreciate the idea of trying to restrict it to affordable housing. What a lot of people don't understand is when you create a threshold of it being affordable housing, is you create a need to measure the income levels of the people using that housing, which is a management nightmare. And it adds costs, and what it does is it takes away the incentive to build the housing. You look around town here, look around this whole side of the island, affordable housing projects, how many have you seen? Very few. And the reason is because that hurdle is a tough one. It's onerous. You're already restricting your rent, and then you're raising your expenses. It becomes very difficult to pencil out a project.
Yeah, and I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we're requesting that these be affordable housing projects, but just to kind of provide. Maybe you can say point two. To me, it reads like we're just saying we want to make sure this is workforce housing.
So I'm looking at this and it says the affordability of proposed dwellings for the workforce. Well, as soon as I see that affordability, I'm thinking we're looking at a threshold for income to use that housing.
the motivation behind this seemed to be the hospital that they want to build, and the hospital's willingness to build their own workforce housing. But there wasn't any way to do that because the hospital's an MCX. So that was what was behind all of this. And like the director pointed out, if you're going to have MCX and someone was willing, the employer is willing to build housing for their employees, you have to, be able to do that. And that's why they were trying to get this legislation. So it was more toward having workforce housing for people that work in MCX.
Okay, use the hospital for an example. This side of the island does not have a cardiologist, it's a trauma cardiologist. I'm on the hospital board, okay? Let's say that they decided, maybe if we create a housing unit for that cardiologist, he'll come. It won't work, but let's just say that have to be a pretty expensive, because that cardiologist is gonna cost $600,000 a year. And they have to be a nice place, but it might be really good if they had the flexibility to do that. So I just wanna make sure that we don't limit it by income. Maybe we limit it that it has to be housing that works on that site.
Yeah, that's why it is, the term is workforce
Okay.
housing. And it says the affordability of proposed dwellings for the workforce that that dwelling would serve. That addresses your point.
Okay.
Also, I think that with workforce comes with investing in our own community. Like, who are we building housing for our own people to move away, or for our people to occupy those houses? Right, like who's coming up out of this, who's graduating from the schools and the universities in our own community? What are we investing into that? Right,
We'll use the hospital again as an example, okay?
and you know, before, back in the day, the hotels right here in Kailua Kona used to have housing for their employees, as well as Kona Village, as well as other places that have housing for their employees as well.
That's what's deficient.
And it was,
there.
and it was invested for the local residents to participate in that process. And not intended for them to live large, but intended to have housing.
Even cooperatives,
Yeah,
housing for their companies.
yeah.
I'm gonna give you an example from the hospital again. The reason that Queens likely wants to have housing there is a great many of their nurses, even their doctors, are traveling nurses and
traveling,
doctors. They're not
They're not permanent.
permanent
know.
here. They're not residents of Kona, but yet we need them to be
I
there.
agree. But I don't know if we can provide the housing that they like. It's not based.
They
on
probably
their-
wouldn't want to live in the NCX district anyway.
I mean, this is Kona.
Actually, the traveling nurses, one of the biggest complaints I see on the hospital board is people saying, we can't find housing. If the hospital had housing for them, they might stay.
And I think in this case, the hospital is planning on building the housing themselves.
Yep.
That's what ignited all of this.
I like this, I like the approach to the workforce. But I agree with the bill, like, how do we make sure that it's intended for that purpose?
I think that this is the council's approach on this amendment to require use permit is good because that triggers the ability for public input and even potentially contested case. It would have to go before the planning commission as compared to making it a permitted use, which was in the last draft. You could end up with anything, any kind of housing.
And I think that I remember when a few years back, there was legislation for the woofers, like for those who were bringing people in for agriculture and they were wanting to build tiny homes. And that particular housing was then being used for both short-term and long-term rentals, right? And so at some point, how much of the housing that we would build for workforce would be empty and available for what and for who, right? What if we bring in all the employees that we need for the hospital and they all find their own homes, because they're not gonna live there permanently, right? But at some point, what happens to the vacant homes? What do we do with that?
What do you mean, Shane? What do you mean, like the regular homes in the community type of thing?
No,
No one's being built.
the
by this.
proposed is that the hospital is gonna be building some homes so that they can bring the expertise to our community and start off living here long term, right? The idea is.
Well, hopefully they stay.
Right, that's the hope, right? And so the dream is, we wanna build some house, put people in them so they can start their lives in Kona. They're not gonna live there forever because it's employee housing, right? they're gonna end up moving out. When they move out, who's gonna occupy that house? Right?
This is actually a question that maybe Jeff can help answer is, I see this in appraising all the time. Housing got developed for a specific purpose, it had some restrictions on it, it went vacant, and then they rent it to
They
whomever
rent
they
it to
want.
whoever they like.
And
Yeah.
building department won't police it,
No.
planning department doesn't really do much policing, so. You can say that it's for, the intended use is for people that work on that site or in MCX zoning, but at the end of the day, what carrot or stick do you use to make sure it's used that way?
And that was my concern with the previous
previous-
version of this bill. Because we have hundreds of acres of MCX empty land. And, developers could have bought the land and used it for any kind of housing, and that's why we were opposing the previous versions. This has much more potential to have housing built that meets the intended need of creating on-site workforce housing that an individual employer wants to create the housing so he can house the employees. It's much more likely to accomplish that. The alternative is not to go back to not allowing any housing in MCX period, which was.
I like the intent. I think it needs work. Yeah.
Is that because the Queens is offering a better way of managing, or what makes you glad about this application?
It's not, I guess it's not glad, it's just better than the previous version.
It's
of
better,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
we're
see.
trying to move this bill to a better place, yeah.
Well, when somebody gets a special use permit, does that have to go for the planning commission, or is that?
Yeah,
This would have to go.
That's not at the discretion of the director of planning.
the director would have review it and the planning commission would vote.
Yeah, okay.
And if somebody was really opposed to it, they could file a contested case hearing if they really thought there was something offensive about
I'll
it.
make a recommendation though to the planning commission.
So there's, if it's okay, I can speak a little.
Please.
And I'll speak more generally, so I'm not
Yeah.
speaking specifically to this, but. So the intent originally was to just make it a permitted use, right?
Housing generally.
Just, and again, I believe the intent was to open opportunities for people with businesses to have the opportunity to have dwellings on site, right? There was concerns regarding the lack of, connection between a business or a use in MCX versus the overall allowance to allow housing in any MCX property. So then there was a change that said dwellings that were accessory to any use permitted in the district, trying to tie that connection. So you couldn't just come in and do housing. You had to be associated with the use. So if you wanted to do a hospital, you could do workforce housing connected to the use in that. If you wanted to do a business, you could have a dwelling that you could live in and be a part of the business. That was the second attempt. I believe people still felt uncomfortable with that. And so the third attempt now is a use permit. Keep in mind, a use permit has very little criteria, has 3 criteria. Is it consistent with the general plan and the CDP? Does it have negative impacts to the surrounding areas? And does it have appropriate infrastructure, right? So they review that in relation. Now, also, you depending on where it is, it also could be in the SMA, right? So it could also trigger development and require an SMA permit. But typically, you won't see conditions in a use permit that are in a change of zone. You're not gonna see fair share, you're not gonna see an affordable housing requirement. You're not gonna see that connection that you're looking for as far as oversight for the actual units being built. right? If it was workforce housing or affordable housing, they come into an agreement with Office of Housing and Community Development, and they have to meet those standards and requirements for managing that development, right? And if they don't do it, then they're the ones that follow up and say, you're not complying with the overall agreement that we have. But in this case, it's just the opportunity for a public hearing for people to come out and say, I'm opposed to that, or I support that. And there can be discussion, like, I'm sure that it's gonna go better for them if they say, we're doing this to provide workforce housing for the people to be able to work here, right? Versus, oh, I'm just doing housing here, I wanna do some housing. Cause now, I don't think there was a requirement to have that connection anymore, just a use permit, right?
And that's why we added these two
Right.
conditions on our
Right.
testimony, that they, that commission, the connection
Right.
is in there for review.
Yeah. So that would be again, what the developer or the applicant proposes as part of the request in the use permit.
So the application would go to you first, right?
Correct, it comes.
And
into
if they were just gonna build some $1 million condos, I don't think you'd approve it, would you,
Why
based on
not?
the, based on the
It's
history?
for the brain, that needs the
I mean,
$600,000.
There's a director that knows what the intent behind this amendment.
It's not a funny matter.
It's
I
not,
wouldn't laugh
it's
at it.
not my, I will provide a recommendation. But again, there was an intent in this bill to provide housing opportunities for mixed use type of development that we're trying to provide in TODs, in project districts. We're trying to provide that mixed use opportunity. If you are in a commercial zone, general commercial, village commercial, neighborhood commercial, it's already allowed. That's all there. Now, granted, some people will come in and do condos, but a lot of times they'll come in and they'll have either all commercial or all residential, but sometimes a mix. They have that ability to mix, and it works. You have somebody that works downstairs and they live upstairs. I mean, to me, that would be awesome if I could go to work and live upstairs.
Well, the TOD guidelines adopted as part of the zoning
Yeah.
code. It's all in there.
But ultimately, if it's in East Hawaii, Windward Planning Commission will approve. If it's in West Hawaii, Leeward Planning Commission will approve the request.
But the representation all along from Bill 63 was to provide workforce housing for people working in MCX. That was repeated over and over again as the intent
Yeah.
behind that bill. Not just the overall general idea of, general commercial of having housing close to work. It was specifically
Sure.
workforce housing for that workforce.
The hard thing with that, Nancy, is that the only time you can truly require that. Again, you can go through a use permit and the applicant can make these representations that they're gonna do that. But the other option is somebody coming in and changing the zoning to MCX. Then at that point, part of that will include, because now it will allow dwellings, right? Possibly, you can include an affordable housing requirement condition, that if they do housing, they have to come in and do an affordable housing agreement.
The problem with chapter 11 is it doesn't necessarily result in affordable housing because there's other ways to fulfill that requirement, and they can be within a 15-mile radius.
All of that is changing. They're doing a major overhaul of.
Good.
Yeah, in fact, quite a ways through right now. So there should be a proposed change to chapter 11 coming up.
Because it's fairly useless the way it is. So,
Yeah, so I guess after hearing all that, how are we feeling about the specific
The question is, do we want to submit testimony or not? And do we want to submit this testimony or not? At the next council meeting on regarding Bill 63.
I didn't review the bill, so I don't know if I can make comment on it right now. But I think I can generally support the idea, but I don't know the path on that. Yeah.
We don't have to submit testimony or,
We get to stand on our previous testimony, which is, we previously submitted something asking for different commissions, and I can send you all this info that we've done in the past. Asking for different other things to be done in MCX districts to make them livable, and then our last testimony was asking them to refer it back. So we could stand on that.
I mean, I can support the intent is what I can support that, but I don't know what the details are.
I'll move that we support this as testimony.
Okay,
what did you say? You had your hand in front of
I
your
said
mouth?
I'll move that we support this as testimony.
Yeah, I think so too.
seconding?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so
did.
motion by RJ, seconded by Charlotte. Any more discussion on this?
The reason I support it is I think it goes much closer to a cause and effect of what they represented they wanted versus how they're gonna try to get it. The directors pointed out that it's not a foolproof mechanism. But if they put these two elements in here, it ties it much more to them having to demonstrate that they are in fact producing workforce housing for a specific employer. So whether they do that or not, but at least we would be saying this is what you should be attempting to tie this request for housing to an employer and an sort of employment.
Yeah, it's trying to codify the intent,
Yeah.
at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, so all those in favor of submitting this testimony, we'll ask the planning department to write it up. And then I'll sign off on it and submit it to the upcoming, it's not scheduled yet, but to some upcoming, whenever they reschedule it, council meeting. Please vote by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? All right, it passes. Janice, do you wanna?
I just want to make one closing remark. I think that I was glad that the council was willing to think out of the box and come up with this, because the first proposal, just to say across the board, housing is, allowable, especially with hundreds of acres of land that we've got as MCX, that just result in, we have no control over what it results in, whether it serves us or not. And I think this is at least more of an attempt to tie them together, and I'm glad that they came up with something different.
Okay, the time is 1:47. We're gonna move on to business item number 3, Tree City USA program update. AC member Charlotte Thompson will provide a status update on the county's Tree City USA program.
So it's been submitted. We're just waiting for approval. That we won't actually see if we are approved until mid-April or May. So just kind of holding off on that. But in the meantime, we've been exploring kind of the next step, which is trying to get a tree planting plan for Hawaii County and how to go about doing that. Jill Wagner's on the arborist committee, and she's kind of she's such a great resource, and she found a bill that is going through legislation right now that is going to shorten the process for us considerably. And it is get that. Here's a very shortened description. It requires the state or political subdivision to ensure and enforce that all arborists and all other professionals managing trees or lands that will impact public trees in its employ, including contractors, adhere to best management practices. So there are some national best management practices for trees, basically, and for planting. And so we're just trying to get that to be a part of what Hawaii County does to the state of Hawaii. And this is the bill, and I did bring a couple others. And some testimony by the guys at the Outdoor Circle.
What was it? I can just write the bill down, yeah.
Yeah.
You got,
Yeah, you can. Did I? You need one too. And but anyway, I think that they might still be looking for some testimony. Just to say, hey, this is a good thing. It passed 4-0. There was one person that abstained. But so it's got some pretty good support already. But since it's gonna cross over pretty soon, it wouldn't hurt. And I did include the testimony that I think it was Winston Welch from the Outdoor Circle. He's the director in Oahu. He gave some wonderful testimony that really kind of laid things out. And then another fellow that's an arborist gave some wonderful testimonies all in here as well. But this is a great bill, and I'd love to see it pass. It's gonna help us because, you know, if we want to get a planting plan, this is the one for Oahu. Maui's just finishing theirs up, which is the one we should probably model ours.
This is for mostly urban trees,
Urban
right?
trees, exactly. So that's kind of the direction that we need to go. And I thought, well, we're probably gonna have to, you know, get a bill in there so that we can see some of this actually done. The arborist committee is very limited in what they can do. Unfortunately, right now, it's just exceptional trees. And so we're trying to find kind of a way around that because, and we don't have an arborist. The mayor still hasn't hired an arborist. We probably need a bunch of arborists to kind of help us. So that right now we're kind of butchering our trees. They're looking at removing 21 mahogany trees from Honoka'a's park facility, and it's just
are they planning to replace?
that I don't know, but why?
I get that we remove invasive or trees that are not conducive to the island.
Yeah.
But are they gonna replace
But
it
these
with
are
natives?
mahogany trees.
Actually,
provide shade,
yeah,
right?
well, not just shade, but what we need to understand is how it relates to the soil and
Right.
everything else.
I don't
right?
think that they're invasive. I think that they're not.
Like eucalyptus
invasive.
does not work for
No,
us.
no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Or pine,
or pine.
yeah.
Like Maui and I think Oahu, they've got their own urban nurseries to grow like native trees specifically
I
for
know,
urban
yeah, Oahu
use.
does that too.
Right.
Actually, sitting.
But they approve legislation to require that. And we don't have anything
They
like
do.
that in
We
this
don't have
county.
anything like that, and that's kind of what we're moving towards,
Yeah,
and this is
Oahu-
gonna be a huge
Yeah,
help.
it is, I like that.
Yeah.
So I already went through one hearing, right? You're saying-
Yep,
Yeah, I went through GBO, so
Yeah.
it still has to go through Ways and Means.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It doesn't seem like there's money tied to this.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know why it's going through Ways and Means, but every bill seems to go through that.
Gotta, that's, yeah.
So if it passes out of that, then it'll cross over.
Right.
So it's gotta go through one more. Well, it's gotta be,
it just went through its second, I think.
I'm
And it's, I think on the 5th of
on the fifth,
February.
that was the first committee, because they deferred it
Yeah, it was the
originally.
GBO,
Right,
Yeah.
that was January, and then I think didn't they just have one?
I
In
think
February,
the January one, maybe this might have been the first binary, cause it's a binary year, yeah.
Yeah,
This is
it's,
second
well,
He's got the.
I got
schedule
the
on.
update one. It was introduced in January and
Yeah.
it passed first reading. They all
Oh.
passed first reading, but then it
Yeah.
got referred to a committee that got deferred.
Yeah,
And then so that first committee finally heard that, and
Got
passed
it.
it out. a bit.
Okay.
So it's still gotta go through a second committee,
Yeah.
the Ways and Means, and
Okay,
then,
good, thank you.
then it'll
then
cross
it'll
over
cross over, yeah.
and probably go through two more
Yeah.
committees. Yeah.
This is what we want.
Will a
Okay, that's it.
commission
That's
be
it.
That's all
formed
that I
for
have.
that? Will a commission just to be not long
I don't
for
know
you
if
to
they're
say, but
requesting a commission,
will there
but-
be a commission?
Yeah, it looks like they're
Yes.
just,
I think that they're gonna, you know, I'm not sure if I think they talked about, some, not revisions, but, amendments to what was proposed, and I don't know what this means.
It's requiring the State Department's office agencies and political subdivisions that manage trees to ensure. So it's not asking for a commission. It's asking for the agency to develop probably a policy
Okay,
to include practices in their division.
yes.
Thank you for sticking with this project.
Yeah.
Hang in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah, thank you.
just waiting.
Yeah. Okay,
That's it?
cool. All right, well, that's the end of the business items. Move on to public testimony on matters not on the agenda. The time is 1:46. The committee will now call for statements from the public regarding items not on the agenda. Public testimony may be limited to 3 minutes in length per agenda item, well, per testimony. If there's anyone here who'd like to testify, please fill out the sign up form at the front of the table. Saw that Sue wanted to testify,
She left.
but she
Yeah.
left. Okay, you don't know what that was about, or?
It was about her maps and she wanted to actually talk to Jeff, so that probably would have been better
Oh,
to just have a separate
Separate thing.
conversation for that.
okay.
Yeah, she wanted to know who she could talk to about.
Water
water.
management,
Oh, okay, I see.
flood corridors and
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. Okay, looks like we'll move on to,
would like to testify. I'm the second one there.
oh, okay, well, you spoke earlier, so I wasn't too sure, but yeah.
I would like to testify. It's very pertinent to what you're talking about with, for example, this matter. You know, everything has changed ever since the news has happened at Kamakohoni. 50 years ago, this was the first restored temple, not only in Hawaii, not only in the Pacific, but on Earth. And the amazing history comes forward by spirit continually. That doesn't stop. But you have stopped hearing and responding, unfortunately, the government. So I want to remind you that all agencies that deal with cares of sacred sites, of sacred lands of Hawaii, all have to go through Ahu'ena Heiau, because this is where we convene with Akua. And I as Lamaku. Lamaku means standing torch. And this is how the ancestors tell me God has chosen of the world one representative from the beginning of time. I am that representative, so honored to be at first of the modern era. I intend to maintain my commitment to Akua and speak on what Akua requires. And so these lands from Honaunau to Kaloko have to do with the very sacred Mauna Wakea. Ahu'ena Heiau is the representation of the true life temple, which is the Mauna. I hear as the Lana Nu'umamau hears. That is something that doesn't go away. And I will be speaking to Ryan Kanakaole and others of DLNR, all of the historic agencies, because all of the sites need to be guided by Akua. All care and customary training for Kahu in the future will come by Akua's guidance, and that is by Ahu'ena Heiau. That's what I have to remind you today, and to make my testimony here to you of the county, where this extends in the county and the state that is here, because the kingdom is here. The kingdom is restored. I told our mayor, when they asked if they could use, he called it a mounted piece for decor in the Hawaii County office of the coat of arms. I said, this, I will correct you. This is not an item of decor. You may use this only if you support the kingdom. And the answer was yes, we will. That's on record. And these are things that have taken place that you may or may not know about. You should have some, my representation at all meetings. Unfortunately, I'm not
Can you
sure if I
summarize
can
that
be
a bit?
there, but it should be, because you need to be up on this. So that's what I have to say.
And I think you want to. Okay, any other testimony That there isn't. We'll move on to the third-party reports from government officials. The time is 1:50, and the committee will now call for statements from third-party reports by any government official not included on the agenda. For the first time, we have a government official with us today. Thank you, Director Darrow.
Agenda item is
True.
Well, this is a recent addition to these that was passed in the state legislature last.
yeah, this is the result of a bill that got passed at the 2005 legislative session.
So Charlie submitted some questions to Director Darrow, and I believe you have those questions, right? Do you want to just respond to them, or you want me to ask you them one at a time? Okay.
Let me turn them up here. So, the first one, I think we basically touched upon it. Can you share your views for the planning department in addressing the current traffic issues? How or would that affect future development in Kona? So, the planning department is not the agency that oversees traffic. We do oversee the planning of future patterns, plans for traffic, right, to resolve traffic. So in our general plan, when you look at that, there's a element called transportation that deals specifically with the overall transportation issues and more specifically in each district. One of the main components of the general plan is our roadway alignment map that identifies our future collectors and future arterials for the island. So those are identified in our current general plan as a map, and you'll see the different colored lines representing the different alignments that we want to see. And we work towards those, trying to achieve those. The Daniel K. Inouye Highway that went over Saturday, the future alignment that's going to connect down to Waikoloa, hopefully at some point. Waikoloa right now, the connection down Makai through the rear of the subdivision and towards Kauai High. In Kona, you have more arterial roads, connector roads that are more specifically identified in the CDP. And so we kind of, we have this general outline, and then the community development plans bring more specificity to those interior roads or those local roads that we want to see happen. And so we were a big part of the general plan. As Nancy mentioned, we are like the facilitators, but we go out to the community. We get all of the input. We hire a consultant. They assist us with studies, putting together the whole package, bringing it, doing all of the outreaches, putting it together, bringing it to the commissions and then to the council ultimately. The same with the community development plans. We work closely. We had staff assigned to each one of these different development plans, but basically the community puts together these plans, and a lot of times planning gets accused of, how come you guys did this and things like that. But as you well know, being a part of putting together a plan, it's mostly the majority input from the community, and then you will have input from the department, from the commissions, and then the council, right? Public testimony through all of these processes. Right now, as we discussed earlier, these particular issues that are happening in Kona, you have two oversights. You've got the Department of Transportation that oversees their roadway network, and you have the Department of Public Works that oversee their roadway network. And it gets kind of complicated and confusing at times, right? Whose jurisdiction is this particular road, right? Many times we don't know. We have to go and find out whose jurisdiction this particular roadway is, to be able to see where they're at in the process of being able to implement improvements for that particular segment, whether it be an intersection at Coloco Drive, or whether it be improvements from Henry Street out to Camp 3, right? Where's the state on these, you know? Lucky for us, we can go look at the STIP, the state and projects improvement projects, or the state plan for improvement projects, and see what they've got on their kind of capital improvement projects. Right now, I didn't see anything that stood out in North Kona specifically. But on the CIP for DPW, as mentioned, there's 3 projects that stand out that are significant, and that's gonna provide some great opportunities for connectivity moving forward. The main thing is, you know, planning is a big part of that process of being able to help with the general plan, putting it together. We always look for input for that. Same thing with the community development plan. We look to the community for the input. We also depend on those studies that provide us with the scientific information of what is really happening on the ground here, right? The traffic numbers will let us know how bad it is, or if it's not as bad as we thought it was. But a lot of us just sitting in traffic know how bad it is, right? Then there needs to be some improvements. And as mentioned, it's hard. You have situations where you're sitting in traffic at 4 o'clock and it's not moving, and you're thinking, what can we do to fix this, right? It's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take some time. We're seeing these proposed projects that may provide some relief to that. Again, ideas like the Kahalui to Keoho Parkway could provide some
There
relief.
is not gonna be anything there, sorry.
Yeah.
And
Could be some
other people had also
improvements.
talked about working on the Kuakini Highway earlier, like former Councilman Curtis Tyler. His input on this committee, I just wanna say it.
Thank you.
That, and also, the community also said no to your CDP in the first place. What do people from Pittsburgh know about island communities is what the people said. And I said, if it's a matter of money,
Lamaku.
then just get $1 from each household. People wanted to say their opposition to these plans.
Lamaku, we're not.
But
discussing
you
this
did
today.
not listen to all of the reaches of the people here. This is what I say,
Okay,
and I add this to the conversation here, and you will not stop my input.
Lamaku, we don't interrupt you when you're speaking. Please don't interrupt when we're speaking.
I wish you
Okay.
would give some feedback, but you give none.
Thank you.
You give none. Thank you.
Okay, so let me continue with what I was discussing, okay?
I'm giving input because it's very important to speak truth.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tyler, if he were here, he would tell you
Again,
what I've
it's-
heard him
it's
say.
an option.
That there was a
Okay.
time that you could have worked on that Kuakini
Correct.
roadway.
There was.
But time has passed, there is no opportunity. God has said, no development from Kaloko to Hononau, no parkway. Ah, Shane, remember you represented the people when we came to this action committee? This was before, and by the way, congratulations.
So let me move on to another
Yes, please.
subject. Is there a need to strengthen zoning laws to better regulate the market for vacation rentals in Kona and or Hawaii Island overall? Yes, there is, definitely. And the need is that currently the regulation is only for STVRs, short-term vacation rentals, which are identified as unhosted. I think Nancy knows all too well about this. There's a whole other section of vacation rentals called hosted vacation rentals. That kind of, these got their name when STVRs came about and people were asking, what about people that live on site? STVRs are where you rent out the entire dwelling where no one lives on site. So they call it unhosted. Hosted are those that people live on the property, but they rent out a room or an additional dwelling unit or guest house or something. So currently, Councilmember Kimball is actively finishing up on a draft bill that will be presented at committee of council soon. I would say within the next month. There's going to be a webinar in March that will talk about the direction of that. And so that'll be the new regulation. It'll cover basically everything relating. It's going to cover unhosted or STVRs, hosted, and she has a direction for that. I'm not sure if she's going to implement hosting platforms in this. I believe they're covered under Chapter 6 right now, but Chapter 6 is not effective until July 1st of 2026. But the intention of that is that everybody come in and get a registration number or be registered. With that number you use on your hosting platform, the hosting platform has to make sure that they're advertising either unhosted or hosting vacation rentals that have this registration number, or they themselves may come under some sort of enforcement action. So that's the direction as far as regulation for vacation rentals moving forward, Joe.
Yes.
The previous bill that was introduced to council that was going in this direction had Bill 121. They were introducing the concept of hosted vacation rentals in the state ag district. And do you agree?
One more time.
She had in that legislation that it would legalize hosted vacation rentals in the agriculture district.
Okay. I don't recall that part specifically,
Yeah.
but
And the Supreme Court subsequent to that ruled that it would apply.
Guys, I think we're straying pretty far off of anything that somebody in the public might have been able to determine from our agenda.
The question on the agenda had to do with regulating vacation rentals.
Well,
Right,
so
but
this was- so this is part of
nobody in the agenda can see anything about vacation rentals there. Your
So, Jean,
agenda
this
item
is-
just says a general report. So I'm gonna ask that you are welcome to ask the director to come back. Because there was no actual report from him, I want to ask this to be reined in a little bit to things that are within the realm of the planning department. And changing state law, I'm going to argue, maybe is not something the planning department can do. Regulating water supply, again, I think the planning department doesn't get to do those things. And so I'm going to ask that we kind of pull this back in a little bit. I've been not saying anything, although because this is our first test of having somebody come and talk about a report. And I will admit, I did not look closely at your agenda. Given that there isn't actually a report that the planning director has prepared and was giving to you, I think we've had a lot of leeway here. So if we want to ask for a specific report, if we want to ask for a specific report,
in advance.
what if
may I finish? If we want to ask for the director to provide a specific report, that the substance of the report can be provided in your agenda, I think that will, and then can come in and speak about that and you're welcome to have a wide ranging discussion about the contents of that report. My sunshine concern is that if I was a member of the public and I saw this, I wouldn't have the foggiest idea about the substance of what we're talking about. And the topics that you're bringing up are ones that I think the public is interested in. And so I think it's important for sunshine purposes, even though you are now regulated under the neighborhood board section, and I know that gives you some more leeway, I still think it's very important that the public have notice about what the discussion is going to be about. So I'm going to ask respectfully that this group kind of pull this back in. This isn't a legal tit for tat with the director. Let's kind of move ahead with the questions that we had that are relevant to things that the planning director may have actual authority over.
These questions are submitted to the director in advance by one of the committee members to be asked
Understood.
this section of the meeting.
Understood. And that didn't let the public know via your agenda what the topics were going to be. So that's my concern. Again, let's just roll ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
I understand Jean's concern. What might be good, I think what she's trying to say is that the questions were given to me, but not to the public, so they're not aware of the questions that were being asked. I don't mind coming back if you folks want to do that. If you have additional questions you want to add to it as well, and then we can present it as part of the packet, and then I can also attend it. When is your next meeting?
It's gonna be on March 10th. Yeah, Gene, I had a question actually, sorry. So is it, we need the actual answers or a report published from Jeff, or if we had just published these questions with our agenda, that would have been more appropriate? I just want to make sure we get it right next time, because like you said, this is the first time we're doing this.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the law is not entirely clear because it's, well, I guess the law itself is not new. The applicability to the ACs is new. I think what we need to see is at least at a minimum topics of the report, because the public, again, doesn't know what you're talking about. And so I think if we can kind of, in your agenda, at least identify the topics of discussion, STVRs, the effect of traffic on development in Kona, whatever it is, give the public at least a kernel so that when they pick up their agenda and look at this, they can see. And ideally, the report itself, whatever that's going to be, is going to be limited to the subject matter agenda items that are available to the public to see. And then obviously include any written back and forth in your board packet for the public to be able to pick up.
Yeah, and I guess the last question I had is, when we're seeing a report like this, are you also concerned that we're asking questions? Should it just be something we receive?
Well, I think, again, in this case, there was no report. There was no report. So I think if we, and you can certainly ask the director for a report about, these particular questions or whatever it is you want. And then, hopefully be getting a report back. And the report doesn't need to be written. It can be just a presentation by the director or whoever it is, on behalf of any agency. It doesn't have to be planning, right? You could, it sounds like a lot of your questions have to do with water. So maybe asking water supply, who actually has authority over water, to come in and address your questions might be an appropriate way to do that. And so I think, again, identifying the subject matter they're going to be talking about, but then of course you can have a discussion and, you get a report in order to be able to have a discussion. But again, the discussion ought to be related to the topics that were identified.
Okay, thank you, Gene. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So do we need to, I guess, end the discussion now or end the report now? But are you willing to come back? Okay, really appreciate that.
It looks good on my agenda right now, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, really appreciate it, yeah. Okay. So,
Obviously, there's a lot of built up questions.
yeah, and like we said, this is a new thing for, you're the first person to come and do this with us, so I'm curious to see how it looks at neighborhood boards.
If, like I said, if you guys have additional questions, I would mention, or reiterate what Jean was saying is that, you know, if you look at a question and you realize, oh, maybe that's not the director's purview, might want to let that one go, like water and traffic. But we can focus on all the planning stuff that would be good.
Okay, that makes sense.
We can work on that for the next agenda.
Yeah, and I guess would Jean be willing to just look at it and make sure we're.
I can,
all
yeah,
good?
whatever we come up with, I can vet it with Jean.
Okay, that'd be great.
How do we know what is in your purview really and it isn't? Cause some of these things that you just mentioned seem like they would have something to do with the planning department, but how do
They
you
do, but-
actually know?
Yeah, as mentioned, if you send it, if the chair sends it to us, we can look at it and maybe. Say this might be better to have, like DWS or.
Yeah, we can work
Commission on
together.
Water Resource
Maybe we need all three of you here.
Yeah.
We used to say the same thing, but we only advise him, not them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Well, that was interesting. Thanks, everyone. I think we'll move on to proposed new business. Do any committee members have items that they would wish to consider for a future meeting?
Yes,
Next meeting, yes.
yes, the Ali Parkway.
Yes. Yeah, we had this on our previous agenda last meeting.
Is
where we-
there a way, Janice, to make it an ongoing, or do we stick it into like the subcommittees like we used to do for it to have ongoing, or?
We haven't been doing the permitted interaction groups.
Yeah.
I guess when our team started, we took an inventory of what existing interaction groups were already there. And a lot of them have we just had to kind of clean up like what they were working on because we weren't sure like where they left off. So we kind of wanted to start new with everyone. That's always an option, but we found that with the other action committees, they seem to, depending on what the topic is, they seem to make a lot of progress just working maybe with a few members of the public who are also interested, or it doesn't really require like a permitted interaction group, because I think that's at least.
I think the sunshine law requires us to only have certain amount of people, and so the permitted groups, like those subcommittees allowed us to actually do
Right.
work.
Yeah, and that's always an option. We just found that sometimes depending on what the topic is, like for example, committee member RJ, he was interested in looking into some proposed language, right, for the code amendment.
Yeah.
He might want to do that. We haven't really talked about that, but he has different options he could take, but that.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
but a permitted interaction group is always one avenue we could go.
Okay, but
Yeah.
not the only avenue.
Yeah, it's not the only avenue.
Yeah, like Nancy and I have been working on Bill 63 stuff, but this has been on the agenda for
Yeah.
months now. And
That's cool.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So you can do, or you can work with one other committee member too,
Yeah.
without any.
Yeah, if we put it on the next agenda, you can kind of, I think you know maybe more than we do actually,
I
just.
think they want
and you
to
can
start recording.
share it with us.
Yeah,
And then we can decide.
Yeah, we can decide where to go.
because even though we heard testimony from the public, I think that was incorrect, or I know it was incorrect. That there was a recommendation for the administration to move forward. And to collaborate with Drew Kanuha at the time was the senator, to collaborate with the state DOT at Sniffing Days. To do more studies and research on the Kuakini Highway area. So I know that we cannot discuss it, but I just want to be able to put it on the agenda so that we can discuss.
Yeah, well, definitely, it's been on our agenda a couple of times, so
Yeah.
it'd be helpful to
I
have
think
you
we need
be in
ongoing
conversation.
discussions. What I was asking.
History.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think one of the most important things we try to keep in mind when we're crafting the agenda is what kind of action does the AC want to take? And rather it just, being kind of like information that's presented and no action moving forward. So that's something that we try to keep in mind, but we can definitely keep it, like Charlotte's item, Tree City has been on the agenda because there's actual like progress updates each meeting. And so if there's an action that the AC could take that would be the time to.
Well,
We
I
talked
think
about
his
that.
history in this
Yeah.
justifies him having an agenda just to provide us
Right.
with his knowledge,
How-
you know,
how
to
would-
update the committee.
Yes.
This related topic, but when he brings this up and describes it to us, we're likely to be interrupted for long periods.
That's what I was
of time.
asking.
Yeah,
We really need the chair to enforce the time limit.
yeah, and that's what it kind of worked today, yeah,
I mean-
briefly, yeah, I mean, we've talked about how.
Another option that you can try when things get a little bit out of hand is you can call a recess.
Okay.
Just
That's
call
what I
her
was-
when things are a little much, if you're, sometimes rather than trying to really shut things down and tell people to be quiet,
Yeah.
sometimes that exacerbates the situation. If you're finding that your ability to, ask respectfully, and this is where
Yeah.
Jeff again is magic. He's very good at that. We saw it again today. If you guys are struggling with that, one of the tools you have is you can also call a recess to your meeting. And if you need to, all of you can get up and walk out.
Yeah,
Call a 15-minute recess and just put everything on hold. You can, your Zoom host can put up a sign online saying in recess until 12:30 or whatever it is, and you guys can get up and walk out of the room. So that's a sort of de-escalation way to try and get control if it's tough.
Yeah, and I think we have a history of not really enforcing time limits or things like that. I think for a discussion like this, we would probably start out by saying, hey, we're gonna do
Right,
3
and-
minutes, and I liked your sign and everything, and I think
And being
and I can be
clear.
better, being
Yeah,
clear from the
of-
beginning of
from
expectations.
the agenda item,
Yeah.
right? The public should know what the action committee is going to talk about and what potential action there could be. So we've been trying to do that for all of the action committees, and it seems to be working.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
good, as long as it works, right?
Yeah.
And I was also, we just were discussing about the questions for the SDVR. Maybe we should probably put that on our agenda for the next, at least post the questions, right, I guess.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, from the
Yeah,
report.
the
Yeah,
report.
yes, yeah, I think that's an important point.
And I hope they have some ideas for downtown Kona Village.
Awesome.
Yeah, and related to that, I know that there is a lot of buzz and a lot of communication going on about downtown parking. And I think that might be a good thing to discuss. Things are getting a little heated, not only just with people in the community, but with visitors. I'm hearing it from visitors. I'm saying we are not coming back. So I think it's something that we probably need to talk about here. I think it's a discussion that I think that council is maybe talking about.
Yeah, and I'm sure part of that's
Related to
related
that.
to what RJ's bringing up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And also, and I don't know if this is part of Kailua, of our purview, would be to discuss passing lanes on Queen K, because they just double striped it. And people are still gonna be out there passing. And I know we may not have the finances to build extra lanes, but it might be something that
It's
is.
not really up to us to try to address all the problems. We
No,
try
I
to-
know
Try
that.
to focus it on something that's, you can find
And that
that's
road's a
already
state highway for both
referred
sides.
to.
Yeah,
So,
it
I
is.
mean, we could always try to lobby legislature, but it is kind of outside
Okay.
of, yeah.
Try to refer things that we bring up to this, to things that
To
are
the
kind of
end.
already targeted within the plan,
Okay,
because we can't fix.
can't fix it.
Yeah, the solution things,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if there's anything else comes up, always email planning and then
Yeah.
we'll meet.
I
and
keep my ear to
talk
the
about
ground because I'm in the community so much, and these are the things that everybody's
it.
talking
Totally,
about.
yeah.
So,
The Ali'i Parkway is a big one in this plan, so it's very
Yeah.
justified, and redevelopment of the villages in the plan
right,
specifically.
you're right. Still learning.
Okay,
Thanks for the reminder.
yeah. Anything else, please email planning and then we'll work on getting these agenda items. Awesome. So do I need motions to adjourn or no? No, okay, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. The
Awesome.
time is 2:20. Thank everyone.
Well,
Thank you.
also,
Thank you,
yeah,
Dee.
same here. Yeah.
Shane.
Yeah,
Nice to
man,
meet
you again.
yeah, I know.
Okay.